Here are the top 3 things that I learned from the book Extreme Ownership, which is by 2 Navy SEALs. It's a very popular book amongst young men. Number 1, extreme ownership is about always taking full responsibility for the screw-ups of your team and of yourself. That means saying it's 100% your fault. Even if someone else on your team screwed up, even if something else happened and you're at the top of the chain and someone in the bottom of the team screwed up. And that's something that most people don't do. Most people point the finger, they blame others, they blame anyone and anything but themselves. But the authors found that the people who rose up and succeeded in the organization, they always took on that extreme ownership and responsibility if something screwed up. And that's how they grew, that's how they improved, and that's how they succeeded. And that type of thought process and culture, when you embody it, others see it, they respect it, and they start to do the same. When an entire team, even if the person at the top, the authors, Jocko Willink, were not really exactly a part of it. If one of their subordinates and a subordinate of theirs may have screwed up a mission and that cost them, he would go around the room and say whose fault it is. And slowly, people would say, it's my fault, and he would consistently say, nope, wrong, try again, until eventually he said, the real person at fault is me. I'm in charge of all you, I delegated that, I made the responsibilities. So I've taken this for my own life to test it out, even if I'm on the bottom tier, the bottom hierarchy, and it's tough. It is tough to just admit your fault. You have to put aside your ego, and it's also tough because admitting it doesn't always solve the issue. Now you're to blame, and everyone, knows that you screwed up. Sometimes they'll have pity, or they'll say, "Oh, it really wasn't your fault," but it's tough. And the real trick is if you can take responsibility and then fix it so it doesn't happen again. I don't think just taking responsibility all the time, but consistently making those mistakes will fix it. And that's the tough part. What if you just can't do a good job at this thing and you're at fault? And that's something that, it sucks, but it may just lead to moving to a different skill set or career or something, which sucks, but there's that. Number 2, the second thing is around having clear, simple directives and commands and rules. We love to overcomplicate things. We love to have all this complex thought processes and principles, but the authors believe that no matter how complex an organization and the things that you do are, everything can be broken down into simple steps if you break it down into pieces. And if you keep those instructions simple for yourself, for others, it makes everything more seamless and crystallized. There may be things that you might think, oh, that's too complex. There's no way you can break it down into simple things. But usually there are. I've had cases where we've had a issue at work where it was just like miscommunication and something went wrong, and it seems very complex. That person said this and they organized this meeting, but when you really break it down, it can still be broken down into tiny bite-sized chunks. This person scheduled this meeting, but it wasn't really clear what the true purpose was, and that became an issue. Well, I could have went to that person and just established that very clearly moving forward. So those are the things that you really have to figure out. And then I guess the third and final tip, and by the way, these are not just tips, but my review and feedback to them. The third tip is when it comes to doing the work and putting in the work and really having that extreme ownership mentality, sometimes there is a sequential, prioritized process to doing things. Focus on one thing until completion or until you've made good progress, then move on to something else. It sounds simple, it sounds linear, it sounds one-minded or for a simpleton or a robot, but according to the authors, it works very well in business because they consult businesses and in the army. And my reaction to that is, sure, maybe there's some skeptic who thinks, this doesn't really work in business. They should stay in their lane of army work and they shouldn't start to extrapolate and say that their philosophy works for corporations and companies like Disney and stuff like that, because maybe it doesn't. And maybe there's some truth there. However, I think it's worth testing out. I think it's worth trying out because that simplicity and that focus does correlate with a lot of other books like Deep Work or Essentialism around productivity, where you have a single processor mind. So if you're doing something, just do that. Don't multitask because then you're going to do a half effort on each. Put in the extra work of double checking and triple checking and just focusing on that one thing until you're sure it's perfect. Here's a thing that's worth noting. Like it or not, the authors have stressed many times that they will double check, triple check, and do all the logistics. Sometimes the painful, boring logistics of paperwork, building PowerPoint presentations, hours and hours of bureaucracy, even though they don't enjoy it. And that's part of your process and delivery, and you have to do that. You can't complain about it, you can't cut corners. And that's how you succeed, by doing everything necessary and focusing and prioritizing that one step at a time, not trying to do two things at once. So thanks for watching. I'll see you later.